there are two skills that are important in this world and can never be replaced. One is marketing and selling yourself, and two is public speaking. And those are incredible key. And I agree, no matter what profession you are in today, those are the two that determine your success.
Thank you, Ritika, for doing this. I'm extremely excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure of mine, if anything. So I'm excited what kind of conversations we have and where we go into with everything. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Canadian journey. You came here in 2018 to become a doctor, right? Cut to 2023, and I got to read this because I don't want to miss anything out. 2023, you're a founder and CEO of Redefined, a non-profit organization placed in 4 countries. You're a business analyst at one of the top consulting firms in the world, which is Deloitte. One of the youngest board of directors sitting in on two UN affiliated nonprofits. You're a LinkedIn influencer and you're a career consultant. This has been quite a journey.
Yes, it has. And it's very unexpected, to be honest, because it's nothing that was planned for. I always say, I feel like I'm just someone who goes with the flow. And if I see an opportunity, I just go right for it because that's something I've been born and brought up with, right? That idea that if there's a train that's going by, just hop on it, right? Don't miss it.
Right.
Because what's the worst that could happen? So
Absolutely, and listen, it's been a ride and a half, and one of the things when I was doing my research, what stood out for me, and I definitely need to throw this your way, is this is something your mum said to you, and it stayed with you, and I think it's shaped a lot of what you've been able to accomplish. Thus far, is that you write your own story. So, do you want to just elaborate on that and tell the audience about this conversation and just give us some background to it?
yeah, definitely. I feel like a bit of its background comes from, honestly, it's me just being a woman and a woman of color to a big extent. I come from a very supportive household where my parents always wanted a girl, like so, like pushed me to be my best self. But, my relatives and the other extended family I had were never really that supportive. They were quite traditional in mindset. My mom always brings this story up to me and told me this at a very young age because she wanted me to realize the privilege I've had to pursue opportunities I want. Because when she was actually pregnant with me, a lot of people pushed her to get an abortion because they were like, it's a girl, it's going to be, it's not an asset to have, right? It's not a good thing to have because she's just going to run away with someone, this and that, right? Not worthy enough of our time. So I grew up knowing that there were people who did not want me. In the world and in life. And to me, it felt really strange how just being or identifying with a particular gender influenced someone to think that way of me. So I just wanted to make sure that, I set an example for people to realize that, irrespective of where you come from, what gender you are, what race you are someone who's capable. And at the end of the day, it comes down to you and your belief in yourself. Even when I came to Canada as an international student, there are so many stereotypes and judgments people may have about you, but it's all about how do you think of yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror. If you know you are that person, if you know you are that person who can make things happen, who can make things work, I think that's how change and impact is created in the world. And that's why that one phrase my mom always told me is like, remember that you are the creator of your own story. Focus on yourself, focus on your actions, because that's within your control. What you cannot control is how someone else perceives you or how they react to you. So I think that's kind of the essence. And even Redefined is kind of based on that idea of creating your own story by realizing your potential and your capability so that you're never underselling yourself. Yeah.
That's deep. And and listen, I must say that you're proving the doubters wrong, and in every possible way, setting up some great examples. You've been on TEDx twice as well, and of course, loved everything that I heard. Um, so, like I mentioned, there's a lot that you have on your plate. So, first question: how are you managing to juggle so many hats with a full-time job at one of the leading consulting companies in the world? So, you gotta share some of your productivity hacks with us.
And I feel like I say it's three things, like a combination. I listen to a lot of podcasts actually, and these are three things I've learned through those podcasts and through my own experiences. A is prioritization. I think is just key, right? Prioritization not on a monthly basis, but I think prioritization on a day to day basis, in terms of the tasks that you have and the goals you want to achieve in that particular day. I think those two things are separate. So realizing that, and I think second is being very organized. For me, organization looks two ways. I do it both in an online format through a Google Calendar, or an Outlook or whatever calendar you use. And if you ever see my calendar, it'll have a time for eating as well jotted down, a time for spending time with friends also jotted down, because I realized that when you have a few things going on, just jotting everything down helps you stay accountable for the things that you have set out to do today. And I think the third one is writing your tasks for the day. Again, very, very important. Either a day before or in the morning. I think that's the first thing anyone else should do, because if you just wake up one morning and you're like, okay, what do I have to do today? You most likely are not going to recollect all the things that are due today or the things you wanted to do yesterday, right? So I feel like just creating the list helps you stay accountable and stay true to those goals and not deviate from them. So I think those three, I think, yeah, are core.
Is journaling a thing with you?
I feel like journaling is very personal to people. Like it's
Right.
very subjective also in terms of how you pursue journaling. For me, journaling is actually sometimes about it's just a few days in a week. Either when I'm feeling really low, when I'm feeling really happy, when I'm really grateful. I think that's when I write down. And my journaling is actually not through a book and a pen. It's actually through LinkedIn. A
Great.
lot of the posts actually people see of me, it's me in a way journaling about my emotions, my experiences at times. Obviously sometimes you need to do posts which help you stay relevant or whatever those terminologies are, right? But most of
Great.
them are just me purely like bearing my soul onto those like online sheets or whatever you call it. So that's my source of journaling. Yeah.
I've seen some of your posts. I've gone through a lot of those while do research, and of course, since I've been following you, what stands out and what makes you uniquely you is the fact that you're extremely authentic and transparent, and I that's something that I really appreciate about you. Now, the question to you is that a how difficult or easy was it for you to be authentic and transparent with some of the challenges that you've had to traverse since you've been here? And while on that topic, if you could also begin with your international student journey and tell us the struggles that you went through.
Yeah. So I'll start with the first part.
Sure.
I would say for me, like when I started out, how do I say? I think I've been to the bottom as well in my life, to be very honest. So I feel like for me, I felt like being transparent, I have nothing to lose because there's nothing I've gained. In a way, like whether it be wealth or whatever other things are that people are usually concerned about. I think when I went through those experiences, those ups and downs, I think that's why I became mature a lot earlier in my age. You could say, because I saw a lot of those ups and downs, and I just realized at the end of the day, whether it be success or whatever you talk about, is just a matter of time. It can be gone in a second, right? So does it really matter, you being so careful about what you put out, being hesitant about displaying your true self? If people don't like you, they can get out of your life. That's something I realized very soon. And I've also had a lot of friends who have left me along in the journey, because I think when you have some goals, sometimes some people may not understand your obsession with certain goals. Some people may not understand why you're working so hard towards particular things, and may assume it to be like, you just not giving them time, this and that. So I feel like, yeah, for me, it was always about just being really focused on what I am trying to achieve here, and just knowing that my goal is just to help anyone else who comes across that post feel that they are normal, right? The time when I joined LinkedIn, which was about a year ago, the kind of posts I saw every single day were just congratulation posts or posts about, hey, I got this award, I got this job, this and that. And
Yeah.
it left me feeling intimidated. It left me feeling like I'm not worthy at all, a lot of self-questioning, and I found my friends feeling a lot of that as well. And I was like, hey, this is not right. I'm sure everyone goes through failures, right? So I like to believe what I say. I think I was one of the first people who started posting about failures, at least in the kind of content I was exposed to. And my first post was about how I got rejected from so many job opportunities. Right? Even when I do get some achievements, I feel like I rarely post about them. Like I won't emphasize on them too much as opposed to my failures, because I think that's the real side of things, and just helping people feel at home and feel comfortable. And when they read my post, they should feel inspired and not intimidated. And I think there's a difference between the two. So that has been my goal. In terms of, so it's easy for me to be
Right.
transparent. And for the second part of your question about my international student journey, um, I think it's like, I know other students have had it tougher. But for me, while I started my journey as an international student, when COVID also hit, my family also went through a lot of financial up and down streams, right? Because of that, I remember I recently made this post where I said, hey, it's okay to have $28 left in your bank account at the end of a month,
I read
because
that.
I've been there, done that, right? And I feel like people feel embarrassed of that, but if anything, I see that as a source of strength. That you kind of start from nothing and then you become something for yourself. So yeah, I think if anything, I see that as a good thing. So if anyone has experienced that, great for you. And then I was doing three part-time jobs. I remember doing an internship as well because I wanted to build my professional resume, and at the same time doing a full-time course. So as you would imagine, my life looked very different than any other student around me, because I was privileged enough to go to one of the best universities also in the world, UBC, and a lot of the people who come there mostly are also pretty privileged, right? And so that's why their realities look different, because a lot of my friends weren't working part-time jobs. They didn't need to, but I had to. So I never really had the time to spend going out or to spend hanging out with my friends, right? And that obviously led to a few friends leaving me or whatever. But yeah, I would say it's been a tough one, but something I'm very grateful for, because it brought me to a community of about 29,000 people today, who I think resonate with my experiences, and hopefully I've been able to help them.
Absolutely. And uh, staying on that topic, when you mentioned that you have to prioritize things, and many times people may not understand what your goals are, what you're busy with. A, you don't owe anybody any sort of explanation. B, there would be people who are there for certain few chapters of your life. They're not there, their journey will not continue into the next phase or the next chapter. But that is where, don't you feel, so many people get stuck, so many dreams die, of our famous Indian quote, log kya kahenge, and just managing expectations. Because one has, I mean, I have also witnessed, seen, experienced, we all have those friends as well, who've gone through similar things where they want to do something, but everybody's just caught up in this entire rigmarole of, or thinking, overthinking things and thinking, what are people going to say? But the good news is that you've been able to really address that head on. Any particular advice that you'd gotten, or you were just that laser sharp focused on your goals that it was easy for you to keep everything else at bay and focus on what laid ahead of you?
Yeah, I feel like, as I said, like, even before, I think like the goal at the end of the day is, and when I work with a lot of students, I come to realize how big of an issue it actually is today. And I think our educational system is actually also to blame for it to a huge extent. That's why I strive towards, I always say I want to redefine education today, because I feel like it's very outdated. What it's producing is individuals who are scared to take risk. What it's producing is individuals who confine to the norms, who confine to rules, right? Like in schools, especially back home in India, this is more so than here, where you said your uniform should be a particular length, you should tie your hair a certain way. So it teaches you to live within the norms, right? So now when you move out into the real world, when you're by yourself, that's why if you see most students when they graduate, they have difficulty finding jobs. Why is that so? If they are graduating from one of the best universities in the world, I don't think there should be an issue. The fact that there is an issue today is because, and most students will say, I feel unprepared, but they're coming again from the best universities, investing hundred thousands of dollars, right? Why do we see that happening today? It's happening today because we aren't educating people the right way. I think that is one of the huge issues. And I feel like I just realized that earlier on. When I came here to pursue kinesiology, when I looked at myself, one random class, I was just sitting and I was studying. I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just looked around in the room and it just felt like everyone was like, even when you talk to students, everyone's just doing it because they think that's what they should be doing, if that makes sense. But it's like, is it really about what you should be doing, or is it about what do you want to do, right? I again know the should and the want. It also comes with the privilege, because some people may not have the privilege to pursue passion. Passion is privilege, right? But I think, like, in general, also I feel like people just follow the norm. In my class, 98% of students who are pursuing kinesiology go on to just become doctors and, those classic roles. It was only me and one other person in the entire classroom who wanted to pursue a career different than that. I never switched my degree from kinesiology to business because I said I love what I study. I just want to apply my knowledge in a different way. I don't want to apply my knowledge by sitting in a clinic and talking to people, right? I worked in that position also. I enjoyed it, but it did not satisfy me. I said, I want to make this a lot more practical for me. I want to enable a lot more other people who are a lot smarter in this profession to keep doing the great work that they are doing. But I want to maybe be on the managing side of things. I want to be on the business side of things and create the impact, right? So I think I just realized that one component. And B, I realized is impact lies beyond a profession. I've always been obsessed with impact, and I was always told from a young age that becoming a doctor is the best way to create that. So I think I was very limited in my mindset. But soon when I realized that, hey, it's all about how do you make the most of where you're at and what you do. And upon realizing that, I never holded myself back. I tried every single thing that helped me create an impact. And I think that's another thing. A lot of students don't try enough things. You ask anyone, they're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I said, okay, how many things have you tried? None, or one or two. I said, when you try 20 things and you still don't know what you want to do, come talk to me then. But at least try those 20 things to realize your passion and value. Yeah.
Let me go back a step back a little. I'll come to the students part later, but when you addressed the fact that the education system, the way we are supposed to, people are supposed to conform to the norm over here, um, is it something which is a more Indian thing, or is it the education system in general?
That's a good question. I feel like it is more of an Indian thing, or at least that's what I used to think. But once I came to North America, I realized it's
Hmm.
pretty relevant here as well. The only
Right.
difference is that in India, yes, you have doctor, engineer, and lawyer. You may not have that here, but still, if you talk to people working within a particular course, all they think about is just that course. The idea of transferability of skill sets, that openness of taking knowledge from one course and applying it in a different space and context, does not even commonly exist here. When I was a part of kinesiology and we had our co-op programs, the work experience
Yeah.
programs, I was like, I want to work with this knowledge, but more from a marketing perspective, right? Or more
Right.
from like a managerial perspective. But there was never that optionality. The only kind of job fairs, the only kind of opportunities you were exposed to were the classic traditional kinesiology jobs, right? And that kind of just took me by surprise, because I was like, hey, I'm here in North America, assuming that, the world's your oyster and you pick up whatever you want. So I feel like you still notice that kind of how do I say, resistance to the non-traditional idea. Even when I started applying to consulting roles initially, because I come from a kinesiology background, and
Right.
now you have a lot of people doing it. But again, when I was applying to roles, which was about 2 years ago, there weren't as many people from different backgrounds and educational backgrounds applying to different roles. So the first times, I know I've heard from so many people, Ritika, why are you even pursuing consulting? A director once told me, you can never get into consulting. You come from kinesiology, do what you are meant to do, right? And that kind of stayed with me, because I was like, how who decides what am I meant to do?
Meant to
Is
do,
it the
right?
educational system that decides it, right? Like, yeah, I think that was the biggest switches for me.
That's interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And as far as students are concerned, I have, of course, like I mentioned, that there are so many international students, whether it is Toronto or Vancouver. It's also the kind of cultural shock that people get initially. Over here, you suddenly come from a very protected environment, whatever it is, whether you come from a humble background, or you have all the privileges in the world. the environment for an Indian student is extremely protected. That's how we're all born and brought up. And when you come over here, then there is you're not ready for this world because you have to fend for yourself. Like you said, there would be days that you'll see $28 in your account, and
My dad should not be hearing this.
but I had £2 when I was in the UK pursuing my masters, and I was like, "What did I do? Why do I only have £2?" And I had to wait for a week. That entire
To
week,
give a check in.
I was working. So what I did was I only had bread and beans for that entire entire week. But you look back at those days, and you, in a way, that you're proud of yourself. You survived that. It's a learning experience. But talking about students over here, what I've seen is there is this clear division. There are two sets of students. One, and again, this is based on people's circumstances. I'm not saying anyone is right or wrong. It's just what phase you are in life at that point in time. There is one set, like yourself, who's here clearly focused in studies. This is what I want to do. Next steps, if not defined, they're going to find out. And then there are students who've come in humble beginnings and background from India. They are here to make money, right? I've met both set of students. The ones that my heart goes out to more are the ones who are doing these odd jobs because they have the financial burden on them. They're literally caught in a no man's land because you can see the sadness, and I don't want to be melodramatic, but you can see the pain in that regard. That, hey, I didn't want to do this, but I'm surviving through this. And I ask them, and whenever I go there, I ask people outside that, what are you doing? Send me your resume. At least I can do this much for you. And I do feel that there is a stark lack of information on what their resume should be, how should they be approaching companies, that there is a better option out there, you can do a lot of other things. So I will now veer this conversation to what you were saying of creating an impact, and that's what you're doing through your consulting, where you're showing them and providing them these skill sets of not only to be able to survive, but to an extent thrive here in Canada, and shed some light on what sort of programs are these, what sort of conversations do you have, and if you can give me one cool example of somebody who took up your course or services, and you were able to create that impact.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like before I even share about the programs and services, I would say the key thing is, I think, mindset more
Right.
than anything else. We can definitely, again, bringing it back to us, right? Like, what is something we can control? We can control ourselves and the actions we take personally. When I also came to Canada, as I said, I worked part-time jobs as well, right? Like, I've worked as a dishwasher, I've worked at a pizza place, right? I've worked as a house cleaner as well. I've done everything you could imagine. I remember even before starting Deloitte, because bearing in mind, I have been financially supporting myself for the last 2 years, even while I was studying, which can be tough. And before joining Deloitte, actually, I had this 1 week when I moved cities, and I did not have a job, obviously. And I was like, oh my God, but I need to figure it out because my start at Deloitte got shifted because of some legal issues and everything that was taking time. And during that week, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to make ends meet? This and that, because I haven't started earning full time yet, right? And I mean, through social media, I do earn, but a lot of that goes back to Redefined. That isn't for me. And I'm very sincere about that as well. So there's this place right opposite my house. I started working there. It's a restaurant. I just went to them. I was like, hey, I need a job. And then I started working them. But one thing I realized is the the environment you surround yourself in influences the person you become. As soon as I went back into that space, you just, for some reason, there's a shift in your mindset. You just realize you are focusing on things that are so short term, right? And that's what I notice with students. Most of them are coming here for that PR, right? And to get
Yeah.
that PR, they're ready to do whatever it takes, wherever it takes to work. But what I always tell them is your focus on a short term goal of getting a PR impacts your long term goals. And that is the sad part, because they start these part-time jobs with that short-term goal of getting a PR. But what happens is, when you keep working in that environment and you're surrounded by people who are also working in that environment, that's all you're exposed to. That's all your information is limited to. I also feel like it makes you less intelligent over time, because I feel like intelligence comes from the people around you as well, right? And that's why they get so comfortable with where they are that it feels difficult to then push yourself out of that zone. Unless there is someone else who comes in and tells you that, hey, see this bright side, and that requires convincing. It's not easy to get them also convinced to apply to certain higher job opportunities. Trust me, it's not, because they are just so comfortable and they're like, you know what? I'm being able to afford myself a car, I'm being able to afford myself a house, I'm happy. So you see that over time, the person who came here with those big dreams, that dream is now limited to just living life. And not to say that's a bad thing. If they want to do that, great. But I noticed it's not exactly what they want to do, but that's what they convince themselves to be. But coming to the programs, um, but I think that was important to call out. And I think for that purpose and to bring that mindset shift, one thing we started doing is, through our counseling sessions, just talking to students and helping realize what are their motivations behind things. You have doctors, you have engineers coming in, lawyers. At one of our recent networking events, we had someone who's a lawyer and she's currently working at a cafe, right, as a server. And it hurts your heart that this person is so incredibly capable, has invested in such a higher education, and see where they are today, right? Like trying to make things work for themselves. And I feel like, just realizing that, what I also realize is the biggest, I think, gap for international students, and almost 60% of those are South Asian students, is two things. One is the mindset that spoke about, and the second
Yeah.
biggest thing is self advocacy, which somehow in India goes against the idea of humility. In India, I think they always push you to be humble, this and that. But I feel like people mistake humility to mean not advocating for yourself, which I think is in stark contrast to the North American job culture today. Because if you want to get good opportunities, I always tell them it's not about how smart you are, which works in India. Here it's about what do you put out, right? Who are you? Like, how do you display yourself? How do you talk to other people, right? The image you present, that's most important. And that's something students don't know how to do, because there's lack of confidence there, and there's a lot of self-doubt that is coupled with obviously coming back from home as well. They have so much responsibilities. These people, when they land, the first thing, like their parents also back home are asking them is, hey, have you started earning? When are you bringing me there? So many pressures. So I feel like it's difficult. So two things we started doing was just giving creating educational opportunities for them. But when I say educational opportunities, it's more like providing workshops that present to them the practical side of things. What are practical skill sets you need to actually operate in the real world out there? Like mainly focused on public speaking, networking, right? Communication skills, strategic thinking. Those are important beyond anything else. And to help them understand where these skill sets play a role, we give them access to opportunities as well in the form of events, conferences, seminars that we host, to give them visibility to those mentors, role models who they can look up to and be like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it as well. We also recently started this program called the Social Impact Fellowship Program to give international students the opportunity to get Canadian relevant experiences, which can then help them set themselves up for success, because that's one of the major barriers in getting into the job industry and the job market today. So I would say overall, I always say our goal is, I never tell students I will get you a job. I tell them that's something you have to do yourself, because that's when you have that self-respect and self-esteem. What we will help you do is realize how can you achieve those goals, and help you move into that direction. And if you apply everything we say, you will eventually get it yourself, right? So I think that is the overall. Yeah, that was a very long
That's
answer.
no, but you covered a lot of ground which is so relevant. Uh, uh, I mean, starting from the environment, I couldn't agree more with you that environment plays a very crucial role in defining what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it. It can be a very small thing, as it can be as small as quitting a habit. I'll talk about it, and this is something that I picked up from Atomic Habits. That book changed my life, right? That your basically your environment defines the kind of success or lack of it that you'd go through if you're trying to break or create a new habit. I had been a smoker for a long time, and I don't know if you've heard about smokers. We at least promise a zillion times to ourselves and everybody that we are going to quit, but that doesn't happen. I eventually, for 3 months, stopped meeting all my friends because most of my friends were also smokers. So that would be I would end up socializing and smoking with one of them. And after 3 months, when I met them, I was like, "Yeah, okay, now I'm over it. So even now I can meet you guys." So for 3 months, I had to change that environment. Not that they were forcing it; they were supportive, but it's just that, hey, you fall to the kind of standards that you set for yourself. So again, that is one thing. Second thing, I think we all have heard this, that you eventually become a sum of six people that you hang out with the most. So that again relays it back to the environment. What are you listening, what are you consuming, the content, right? Because this, I mean, Google, our phone, Apple, whatever it is, they're listening to us. So whatever you're saying, that's the kind of things that keep coming up on your phone and social media as well. So it invariably, you gotta break that trap. And I love what you're doing for the students, because for this chat, what I also did was proactively go out and have a couple of conversations to figure out what exactly are some of the problems that the students are facing. Two things that really stood out for me when they were mentioning this was, a, that like you said, that they're not getting jobs, and you're not helping them get jobs, which is great. But uh, one, I think they suffer from confidence, because again, if you go back to our roots back in India, and this is not an India bashing session by any which way, but there, if you know the language, if you know English fairly well, you can get by, right? And and fairly well. So suddenly when you come here, draw is against you, because for them it's the first language. And then somebody who anyways is not doesn't speak the language really well, there is a lack of confidence. That said, I think we what people forget is there's so many people, again, South Asia. We have people from China, Japan, Korea. They can't speak the language any better either. I mean, we're all in the same boat, but it's eventually the individual. So I love the fact that you're addressing people's imposter syndrome, if I was to get this right, that, hey, you can do this. One of the problems that stood out, Ritika, is that when I asked them, so, okay, language, I understand. That's something that you can work upon. You have Chat GPT, which can write things for you. At least, it'll get you a foot in the door. Then, as far as the talk track is concerned, you can figure out how to do that. But the first step is met. People say that they need references for any job, even if it is actually, like you said, going into a restaurant and getting a job over there, right? So how is it that they can overcome this barrier?
See, I would tell you, I get most students saying this to me, but I'll tell you, sometimes it's not about what you're asking for, it's about how you ask it. I think that's where students lack. I understand references are great, but the thing I tell to students always is the only thing a reference or a referral does is it brings your resume, let's say, from the bottom or the middle of the pile to the top. It basically ensures that an employer looks at your resume, because 60% of the times what happens is almost, sorry, 60% of people who apply to a job, their resume is never even seen by an employer, and they still get rejected because the employer may find the best person in the first two job applications, right? And they don't bother to send individual emails saying this and that, and they just straight on reject the rest of the people, leaving them feeling that self-doubt and being like, oh, I don't have enough experiences, this and that, right? So I feel like that is one thing to kind of keep in mind, and just being aware that, okay, referral is important, but it's not the be all end all, first of all. But in terms of even getting it, I think it's how you go for it. I have so many students message me every single day, Ritika, can you give me a referral? And I'm not even a hiring manager.
Hmm.
Imagine what the hiring manager gets every single day, right? And I told them, if that's something hundreds of people are sending out every single day, do you think anyone's going to give you a referral just on the sake of you telling that, hey, I just want a referral. People do not even take the time to introduce themselves, which goes to show me that they are basically copy pasting a message and
Yeah.
sending it to 500 other people, right? There is no individualization there. There is no value of my time and effort there. So I think that's one thing I try to explain to students is that even when you are networking and reaching out to people, don't reach out in the first place saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, can you help me get one? I think reach out by saying, hey, I just want to learn more, because I can guarantee you most of these students that are reaching out, they themselves don't have a clue of what they want to do. They actually don't. Which is what I tell them is, take the effort to understand what you want to do and then go ahead and apply to job opportunities, because it's quality over quantity when it comes to job applications. You rather be applying to 3 jobs in a month and hearing back from one, versus applying to 100 jobs a day and hearing back from none, right? There's a reason that happens. I've been that person who applied for 100 jobs on a day-to-day basis, got rejected, went into depression and so many other things, right? And I see a lot of students going in that same direction. But it's like it took me time and it required me pushing myself a lot, because what's difficult to do is build a relationship with someone, right? And that relationship that you build with someone, which doesn't happen through a one-time coffee chat, it's sometimes something that happens through 4 5 coffee chats over a period of months, then days, right? And that eventually then leads to a referral from someone else. I have had times where people, I've never even asked for a referral and they've just given it to me, or I've never even applied for a job but I've been offered a job just because of that relationship I've built with people, which goes to show it's like friendship, consistency, and you constantly reaching out to that person has a huge impact in how you come to be perceived. Because let's say that if there are 500 people constantly reaching out with those traditional messages, versus you are the one who's checking in with them, knowing how their week has been and asking them and wanting to learn from them, you are someone who stays active in their minds, right? Compared to anyone else around you. So I think the key is there, is not about what you want. Yes, you can definitely get a referral. Anyone can get it. Even without experiences in your resume, you can get it. It's just about how do you approach the other person and what kind of a relationship do you build with that person, and are you genuine, and are you aware of what you want to do? Most students will also tell me is reach out, okay, I want to work at Deloitte as a business analyst. I said, why Deloitte? They go blank. Okay, why business analyst specifically, right? Now, business analyst is a very general terminology to use. There are so many different types of business analysts. Within Deloitte, I work on a human capital consulting under that organizational transformation, under that transformational change, and under that behavior first specifically, right? So if you come to me and ask me, Ritika, what are the requirements of a business analyst? I cannot answer you. What business analyst are you referring to, right? That's another thing that's lacking. So I feel like it's those things, so the lack of information for sure, but I also feel it comes with that lack of research on the side of the student, potentially because no one has guided them in the right direction on what they need to be doing. So I think it's a combination of those factors.
And if I take this back to what you originally said, the education system over here, even in Canada, you feel needs a little bit of a shake up, right? Are they not being prepared for the outside world and they're just being given degrees? That's it?
I feel like when it comes to skills, I would say yes, that is definitely a reality. Most students, when you ask when they graduate, they have no clue what they want to do. I would assume an educational degree is something to help you figure out what you want to do and guide you in the right direction. So if a student is graduating, not knowing what they want to pursue and feeling like they're unprepared in the real world, that definitely is a reflection on the educational system and how limiting it can be. And many a times, I think it's also because every course or degree that you take, that's what I said, right? Like, even though here you have a lot of variability in the type of courses you can take, the course you take becomes limited in just the scope of their own objectives. That transferability is not existing, and I think the lack of that transferability is what impacts students, because they feel they're limited to pursuing only something in science, right? And they cannot transition to something else because they are taught that that's something not possible, just because they may not have the degree knowledge of it, right? But I think at the end of the day, experiences are more important than anything else today. So I feel like in that regard, yes. But in the regard of, the job search process, it depends on the course you take also. I see a lot of business students, even at UBC, sorter students, they are well versed in this. They have like courses that they're assessed on where they teach them how to create a LinkedIn profile. So I think that's the part I was mentioning about, where here there is that traditionality in every course, whereby unless you're a business course, no one's going to teach you about networking. I've never had, like, even in my courses, I've never had a presentation to give. Can you imagine? Public speaking has not been done at all. So imagine the type of confidence these students have. If they are put in a room today, you'll usually see the business students raising their hands, asking questions, as opposed to the others, because they have been made to feel more comfortable with doing that compared to the others. So I think that's a lacking. But with the job specific coaching, even if let's say it is generally provided, I feel what happens is there are multiple factors. If you're a part of a bigger university like UBC or UFT, I half of the time was unaware of a lot of these things even happening in the first place, because it's such a humongous university. How do you keep a track of these things? And secondly, I've noticed is this is bigger of an issue with colleges than universities, because in universities, I'll tell you, is the environment you're exposed to, the students you're exposed to are a combination of people who are prioritizing different things. In colleges, the students you're exposed to are all prioritizing the same thing, which is what? Which is getting a PR and working whatever job you can to get that PR, right? So these students are so tired every single day because they're doing a full-time course, going to a part-time job, coming back, that they don't even get the time and the effort sometimes they're not able to put in to even attend some of these workshops that these universities may host. And the last, I would say, the gap is that universities host workshops by bringing in these subject matter experts. I think that's not what students need. What students need is someone who's been in their shoes not too long ago to tell them about their experiences and how did they figure it out for themselves. That's what's important. That's why for us, we always say we are for the youth, by the youth, just making sure all our mentors are always in that age bracket of 18 to 25, so that they've been through their positions not too long ago, right? And they can relate to those experiences.
Yeah, and as the saying goes, and that's really the entire concept around which I've based the podcast, that you're best equipped to manage and advise the person that you once were. Right, most of the podcasts you'll go, people ask you, or the question that flows around is that what advice would you give your 20-year-old self? I mean, because you've been there, done that, and how would you do it better? So that's great. And staying on that topic of creating an impact, let's talk about Redefine, because that's something with which you're creating a huge impact. And you're there across 4 countries. You're placed in 4 countries: India, Pakistan, Uganda, and Ghana. So this is just the starting, and I'm sure that you have big plans for it. But take me back to the journey, that how it started from thought to action. It is progress over perfection. So how did you go about setting this up, and where is it today?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love how you framed it, progress over perfection, because I think that is who I am actually. As a person overall, that's the ideology and the mindset with which I approach things. Like even when I first, started thinking about, because I had started volunteering actually since the age of 10. I used to teach my house helps English and, other courses, their children as well. That soon transgressed into me working, in positions with the non-for-profits, and then eventually me starting my own non-for-profit when I was in like third year of university, beginning of fourth year. And I think the reason, as I said, to start was obviously those kind of challenges I noticed. But I think the big part for me was when I realized, hey, this is something I want to do. I don't think a lot. You know how a lot of people you'll find assess the benefits versus this and that. Like I'm not that kind of person. If I realize, hey, I want to do this, I just go ahead straight into it. So the day itself I realized, I created a website on Wix. I started an Instagram page. I created a logo that same day, and I submitted an application to become registered as a nonprofit. I needed $200 to register as a nonprofit. So that time, that was something I had in my savings at that time, and I was like, this is a great investment for it. I applied. A week later, my organization was registered, and I was like, now we just have to get to the groundwork. So initially, a lot of the how do I say initiatives that I conducted were like I was the only person in Redefined, if that makes sense, right? Like I was the only working member, and it's just through the people around me, through my own network, leveraging that, I was able to find people to get associated with the cause as a volunteer initially, and those people eventually transformed into becoming members of our community today. So today across Canada we have about 500 volunteers who are part of our community, which I think is incredible, and more than like 1,000 students who are part of it. The Redefined student community, which I think is also amazing, because it's kind of like through these experiences, I feel you're able to help students in a way whereby you're able to give them exposure to try on opportunities that lie beyond their comfort zones. I have so many students who say, Ritika, I want to develop marketing skill sets. I was like, hey, I have an opportunity for you. We're planning to run this fundraiser. Why don't you create the post and this for that? Depending on whatever impressions, clicks per impression, or whatever we get, you can leverage that in your resume to land further job opportunities. So what they're doing is two things. A, it's giving students exposure to get experience and those Canadian relevant experiences, but at the same time, give back to communities and realize the importance of impact in your life. Right? A lot of students then leave our community drive saying, Ritika, I've never felt better. And they go on to even do their own, right? Where we just give them the funding and they conducted themselves. So I think it started like that. It started as a movement, I would say, in a way, whereby when we started doing it, other people, when they started experiencing the impact and the happiness that they got out of helping someone else, I feel like when you help someone, you are actually helping yourself more than them, because I feel like the amount of satisfaction it gives you, I think, is a lot higher. So I feel like in some ways I feel it's selfish also because it makes you feel better about yourself, right? And I feel like when students realized that, they just kept spreading the word, and I think automatically the community grew. We went from Vancouver, where we are based out of, to then Toronto, Halifax, and now we're moving into Waterloo as well. So like, I mean, there are more people who keep reaching out, but I think it's also is like, do not spread yourself too thin, and you want to make sure your ideologies and values are staying intact. You want to make sure anywhere you are at, people just feel valued, people feel like they are being given access to the right opportunities. Today we've completed like a year and a half, actually. Not today, last week we completed a year and a half, and the year and a half we just yesterday was summarizing all our impact goals. So thankfully, like, we have impacted about 30,000 people until now and counting. Across the globe, we have conducted about more than 50 initiatives across, and got on board, like, overall, if I count, we have more than 2,000 volunteers. So I think 2,500 I said 2,500, 2,500 volunteers. So I think it's definitely been a journey I did not anticipate happening, but I know there's a lot more to be done. And one of the most amazing initiatives we're working on right now, and if anyone is passionate about it, is we're building a school in Pakistan, because we were like, we have been educating people, but let's also create accessibility by giving them the resources they need, because a lot of students have access to government schools, but what happens is they may not have access to buy those resources, which can prevent them from actually performing to their best at these schools. So that, and I think digitization of classrooms is something we're focused on. It's getting projectors, screens, like, installed, and Wi-Fi installed in these schools, so that they can get access to mentors across the globe, right, who can very easily teach them now, instead of having to go in person and give them access to the knowledge, because exposure, again, as we spoke about, is something that's necessary.
In a year and a half, you've been able to impact 35,000 students. That is commendable in each and every sense. That's absolutely amazing. That's such a great job done.
No, thank you so much. And I think our goal is like, I think I was just mentioning to you before the podcast, our goal is to impact 100,000 people by the end of next year. Hopefully we do that, and conducting 150 initiatives, in addition to what we have done till now. And just counting, I think, the cities we are based in as well, like in like, Canada, for example, I already mentioned the cities, and even in India, we're based in five other cities, and even in Ghana and Uganda, we're based in two cities at least there. So if you count in total, that's like 15 to 16 regions, right? So if you count 15 to 16 regions, and if on average we even do two or three per month in each of those regions, and each of our initiatives provide cater to about 200 people. So if you just make the math, on average, right now, even today, per month we impact about 3,000 people. So right now, starting like last month, because of like the teams we have got on board. So if we keep impacting those many people, I think the goal is not too far away.
More power to you, because you're genuinely making that difference. A lot of people talk about it. You're just pounding the pavement. You've got whole set of warriors and volunteers behind you who are supporting this cause, and rightly so. I mean, it should give you every sense of satisfaction that it does, because it is a great cause. And I think education is something which is our biggest tool to get out of any situation, because that does equip you for the life ahead. But of course, you're redefining that. What I want to now next talk about is actionable insights, and this is a section where I take away information which people can immediately apply to their lives.
Oh,
And
I like that.
first, your mantra of growing an audience on LinkedIn.
I think it's being authentic and being having reciprocity in how you are acting up on the platform. What I mean by that is like if people are commenting on your post, liking your post, do the same for them. If someone's getting promoted, congratulate them. I think just making people who are becoming a part of a community feel more like family than a follower, I think is also key.
Building on just in that,
Yeah,
because now we also have a hybrid culture. It's not as if people are in offices every single day where you get to build those relationships. So
yeah.
even if you're working in an organization, it's through team chats or whatever that is, Slack. You stay connected with people. It is important that you're building these relationships, because I keep having this conversation. If you're approaching somebody for a job, you're late in networking. It has to be a relationship before that. And this is not India, right? Where you can just send your resume to someone and you know that it would reach. Because it happened with me as well. I mean, I was hoping when I came here that, I'd just send my resume to people and they would be happily forwarding it. I have some of the biggest brands on my resume, but I was in for a rude awakening. Somebody just turned around and told me candidly, and I appreciate that, because that was the eye opener for me. I wrote to somebody and she said that I don't even know you. What makes you think I'm going to forward your resume to HR? And I was like,
I've responded to people like that. So I love that she's doing that.
no, 100%. Because I don't, at times you need that whip, right? And this is that. Next question would be that what tools, tips, and tricks would you recommend that people start using if they're starting out now to grow their personal, sorry, their personal brand on social media?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people these days, especially with the AI tools that have come into the market, everyone talks about leveraging them every single day. I feel like, especially when you talk about something like LinkedIn, I feel like you cannot use ChatGPT and have a great post out there. I honestly feel that because I feel like there is a limitation that comes with social media at the end of the day. And I think a big part of it, not with social media, with AI at the end of the day. And I think you can always know when someone has used ChatGPT to create a post
Oh,
because
absolutely.
the language, the terminologies used are a certain way. So I feel like when it's about creating content, I would say try and be as authentic and as you can be. I think like these tools I think are more helpful when it comes to more managerial things. Like there are a lot of AI tools I know out there that you can use to manage your social media profiles. Like I remember once I used that you post once there and it posts automatically on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and everywhere else for you. So I think those kind of management tools are things that I would definitely say are an asset, if anything. And secondly, like even from like email marketing and other perspectives, it's great. But I think specific to LinkedIn, all I would say is like like I use Canva a lot personally, especially when I have workshops and other things that are coming up to create those kind of really aesthetic graphics that I can then display on LinkedIn or maybe I actually don't know editing, so I just have an editor that whenever I make videos they edit it for me, and then I'm able to put it out there. So I personally would not have any like suggestions for what tools you should use, because I think for LinkedIn specifically I don't think you need to.
Perfect. Staying on LinkedIn, networking 101. I think we covered quite a lot, but so you can tell me about one thing that you see people doing which you think they should change immediately. And of course, I think one
Mhm.
of the things that we covered is that not asking for a job straight away. But apart from that,
Yeah, I would say it's like maybe like aside from that one, I think the key is focus on consistency, and actually building a relationship with someone. I think that's key to networking as well. I think many times people see networking as a one-time thing or like a only job thing, but I think it's like the be all end all today. Whether it be you wanting opportunities at conferences as a speaker, whether it be you applying to awards and other things, I think it's so relevant even to create your own social community. We run so many informal events where we take students on a hike, take them to movie nights, etc., just so that they can build that sense of community with peers. Networking does not always have to be with a mentor or someone who's a senior with a billion-dollar company or something like that, right? I think networking should be done with every single person around you to build those relationships and seen more from a longer term perspective than a one-time thing, because it's not transactional. Right, and let's not make it transactional. Let's make it as helping each other out, and the only way to do that is by having that sense of reciprocity and empathy also for the other person, and not using them for the role they occupy, I would say.
I like that. Um, how does one beat the ATS trap?
Oh, this is the juicy question. Well, I would say, like, I always told people use a Google Cloud generator
Yeah.
for this purpose. But recently, there's this platform I've come across called JobScan. So I'll talk about both of them a little bit. So there's this platform called JobScan, and what it basically does is when you create an account that you can basically sign in with LinkedIn, it gives you 5 free tries, whereby you can upload your 5 different resumes basically, and after that it's paid. But so for those 5 free times, what it does is you upload your resume, and based on that resume, it will generate a list of keywords, right, that come out of your resume. Now, what you also do is you go to the job description of the application that you're applying to, and then you copy the responsibilities and requirements, and you paste it on that platform as well. Now, what it'll do is it'll create like a match rate between the two to showcase if the keywords and those terminologies that are reflected in the job description are being reflected and represented in your resume or not. So it's a very good assessment for you to know, is your resume ATS ready or not. ATS ready is basically you using the exact terminology the job description is stating in your resume. For example, if the job description states communication, but let's say if in your resume say, yes, I worked with the team together, we did this and that, you're technically communicating when you're working in a team, right? But when it goes to the ATS software, it's not going to read the communication word and just think you don't have that skill set. So I think that's one of the things to realize. It's technology at the end of the day. So there is no subjectivity involved there. It's very objective. So I think that is key to keep in mind. And let's say if you need more tries than 5, easier way to do it also is just go to just type Google Cloud Generator on Google, and the first link that pops up should mostly be the one, and you basically paste your job description there. It will pop up a bunch of keywords in like a word cloud. Screenshot that, put your resume in there, again do generate, and it'll pop up a list of keywords. Now, making sure that those keywords match, I think, is key. And last thing I would suggest is, one thing I always do is my trick. I always copy the job description and paste it under each experience of mine in my resume. And then I'll fill out my experience in the terminology or in the sentence structure that the job description was in. Because now you're speaking the company's language. That is another key thing to keep in mind, right? So I think those would be the two main things.
Love it. Um, best way to, and this is for all the students and of course people who've been sort of
Yeah.
caught in the midst of all the layoffs that are happening. Is there a best way or any website to find part-time jobs?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say there's actually this platform called Is Empower. That is, I think, a really good platform to leverage because their main thing is just creating like a job portal for international students. But one thing, again, I always say to people is keep important in mind. It's not just about having access to jobs available. You will find them anywhere, right? If you go on Indeed, if you go on LinkedIn, also these jobs are available. But it's about having the right approach when applying to these job opportunities. That again comes down to your networking aspects. That again comes down to how do you initiate this process of even job application. Job process usually looks like two things for people: going online, finding the job, submitting resume, resume and cover letter, but that's not what it should be, right? Because that gives you zero returns. And even if by chance, let's say you get an interview, uh, you most likely won't hear back after that interview, because like those applications do not come up as a priority application. Having been on the side of both the employer and the person applying, I have realized things which I think I did not know before. So yeah, I would say it's empower also. And one thing Redefine is doing right now, we obviously don't tell you, hey, these are the jobs available. But one thing we do is create an employer database. So what we do in that is we basically get all the students who are part of our community to fill out that Excel sheet, and we circulate it amongst employers, mostly like part-time places, because that's what students demand most, and just spread it across them and have them write down their availabilities, their contact information, etc. So that whichever employer is interested, they just highlight that student, and then that student gets put up with them. But we let the student manage the communication piece. All we do is just kind of let them know that the student is looking for an opportunity.
Networking events or job interviews, something that you could recommend as a tip or trick that students can use to stand out through that process.
Yeah, I think key is your introduction. That 2 minute elevator pitch that you give to someone is 100% key. It's the one that dictates, like if you've got someone hooked to your experiences or not. One thing I always say to students about even a networking event, and networking events are more challenging because in a job interview, you are their center of focus.
Right.
But in a networking event, there are hundreds of people around you, right? How do you be the one who stands out? One thing I always say to students, and I do this at every event that we have, whenever you see me greeting anyone I meet in person, I always go in for a handshake and I always create that eye contact. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do often. And I think that's key, because even if it's for a fraction of a second, you are registering the face of that person, they are registering your face. And it gives you a moment to register that in your head and recognize that person by that name. And secondly, when you create, it's kind of, how do I say, like it sounds weird, but it's like you activate all those senses, by shaking that hand. That touch
Yep.
sense is activated, that eye sense and other things. So I think that is key. And I think second is like, yeah, that 2 minute elevator pitch, so that when you leave this room today, that person doesn't remember you as someone who wore a white shirt and a black pant, but they remember you as someone, who is passionate about so and so space, has created this impact and is looking for opportunities here. That is who she. So in that 2 minutes, you should be saying things you want that other person to remember about you, right? And towards the end of that 2 minutes, the person's going to waver away, because our attention span is short, 1.5 seconds, right? So the first 1.5 seconds are actually your key to make sure all the important information comes out then, and the last 5.5 can be anything else. So I
Yep.
think, yeah,
We don't even now watch the full 30-second reels, right? They say that the
exactly.
5 to 10 seconds, that's your window, or even lesser. The first 3 seconds is your window. That's some great tips and tricks there, Ritika. Thank you very much for this last section. This is called My Drift. You can answer in one word, one sentence, whatever you like. Your favorite podcast.
Ooh. So I can name the person who does the podcast. um
Okay.
There are multiple. Oh my God, this is challenging. I feel like from a life perspective overall, I would say Jay Shetty.
Hmm.
Amazing. I think the kind of like topics he gets into,
Yeah.
it's very holistic in nature, because he goes from spiritual to something more scientific as well. And I think the second person would be, I don't know if he technically has a podcast of his own, but I listen to a lot of his motivational content. Is I think I'm mispronouncing his name, Grant Cardone. Um, that's He is my go-to person for business, like business podcasts, anything relating to that. That is the guy to be. I think he's just so motivational. He has daughters as well. His entire family is like a family of like these like people who are just killing it out there. And his daughters are also like 13 and 10, and they're making wages beyond what any of us make today. uh,
Wow.
yeah, true, because he taught them at such a early age what it is about. And he says there are two skills that are important in this world and can never be replaced. One is marketing and selling yourself, and two is public speaking. And those are incredible key. And I agree, no matter what profession you are in today, those are the two that determine your success, because everyone works hard, right?
Yeah.
I think those two are fairly skills that people master, and it's usually like, yeah, overlooked skills, I would say.
That was going to be one of my questions. So you've answered the second question as well. That's awesome. And I didn't, I'm going to look them up because I haven't heard of the gentleman.
Okay.
As far as business is concerned, my two go-to guy is Alex Hermosi and Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk
Oh yes,
initially,
Gary is also amazing. Yeah, they're
right?
kind of the same people, the same boat. They're in the same boat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look that up. One book that you'd recommend to everyone.
Wow, I wish I read a lot of books. But I think the one that I'm reading right now, oh my God, what is the name? I don't have it around me. But the top five habits of the most successful people. I think I'm
Right.
reading that one right now, and I think is I don't remember the writer, but Atomic Habits also the one that you're mentioning about. I haven't read the complete book, but I think it is definitely a game changer.
Oh,
I
for
think it
sure.
helps you realize the importance of habit building, which I
Absolutely.
think is key today for success, right? So I would say those two.
For sure. Consistency, and it's not about killing yourself, just
Yeah,
that one tiny little improvement, 1%, and how it compounds over a period of year
yeah,
to make such a huge difference. So that's definitely, and eventually it boils down to consistency, right? And that's the name of the game.
yeah.
Awesome. Since you said Jay Shetty, and I will ask you this question, that something that you value which others don't.
Oh, I love this. Wow. Um, in his words, being understood.
Absolutely. Ah, yeah, I think you clearly laid that expectation when you said that, when you're laser sharp focused on your goals, then you really don't care about being misunderstood, right?
But I think it's a strength and it
Yeah.
takes time to develop it. I also realize is like as I grow and as you develop more responsibilities, you build more relationships, it actually becomes difficult to keep doing that, because it's just, I think there are so many different moving parts that get attached to you. There are so many different responsibilities that come along. I feel like when you're earlier in your life, it's sometimes just you at the end of the day that you have to take care of. So it's a lot easier to risk things, so that's why my goal has also become is to do a lot of that risk taking as early in my years as I can, because I feel that tendency, that it reduces a little bit. It doesn't go down, but it does reduce for sure. So yeah.
Perfect. Last question. And this is where the foodie side of me comes out because I'm trying to get all the coolest spots. So, one restaurant that you definitely recommend in Vancouver.
Ooh, I haven't been to Vancouver in a while actually, and even right now I'm in Halifax. But oh my god, this is a tough one actually. See, every other question I'm so quick. This one is so difficult. Oh my god, because I'm a foodie myself. Um, I would say there's this. So I'm a huge chai latte person. I'm a
Hmm.
huge chai latte person, and there's this place called Maxime's. I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. Maxime's in Vancouver. It's on Harvard Street. Oh, that cafe has one of the best chai lattes you can ever find.
Perfect.
And Blue Chip Cafe as well at UBC. Their cookies, you can never get any other cookies like that.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the
Same
time to
here.
doing this. And when you're in Toronto next, we should definitely catch up, and I will figure out a cool chai latte place for you, and we'll
Oh
catch up there.
yes! Oh my God! Yeah, let's explore. I love exploring cafes. Cafe hopping is my thing. So definitely, I'll be there in August. So happy to connect, and thank you so much for
100%.
having me on board.